Hello. Today I'm presenting my graduate scholarly project, volunteer integration in a unionized parks department. This project looks at how a parks department, specifically the City of Terre Haute, can thoughtfully integrate volunteers without undermining unionized labor protections. Now, the core of this work is an evidence based review paired with contract recommendations designed to respect the 2026-29 collective bargaining agreement with the Teamsters Local 135, while also addressing real operational and fiscal challenges facing the department. Now, to understand this issue, it's important to start with some context. The Parks Board is operating with three overlapping frameworks: the collective bargaining agreement, the city's Parks and Recreation master plan, and the ongoing fiscal constraints. Now, each of these shapes what the department can realistically do, who performs work, how maintenance is prioritized, and how the city engages the community. Any volunteer program that ignores one of these frameworks risks failure or labor conflict, so alignment across all three is essential. The problem this project responds to is fairly straightforward but serious. Terre Haute parks are dealing with aging infrastructure and growing deferred maintenance, while staffing levels remain below national benchmarks. Now, that imbalance creates operational consequences. Maintenance becomes reactive instead of preventive. Equipment replacement cycles stretch longer, and staff have less capacity for programming and outreach. From a labor perspective, this also means increased overtime, heavier workloads, and potential disputes if volunteers are introduced without clear boundaries. Okay, now the key is structure. Volunteers can safely and appropriately assist with things like beautification, event support, and operate and observational reporting, as long as tasks are clearly defined, non-skilled, and supervised. Now, when done right, volunteers increase community stewardship and capacity without crossing into bargaining unit work. Now, this slide really represents the backbone of the entire proposal. To avoid labor conflict, the collective bargaining agreement must explicitly prohibit volunteer displacement of union work. Now, that means volunteers cannot perform bargaining unit tasks, replace employees, or substitute for laid off staff. The recommendation here is clarity at the contract level, clearly defining what is exclusive to the bargaining unit, what volunteers may do, and what is entirely prohibited. Clear language reduces grievance risk and projects union jurisdiction. Okay. Now, to make this work in practice, governance matters just as much as policy. The project recommends joint oversight committee with equal union and management representation paired with a designated, guess what? Volunteer manager. Now, together, they create a feedback loop, oversight, reporting, and fast resolution of concerns. Now, if a question arises about a task overlap, it doesn't escalate into a prolonged dispute. It's reviewed quickly, transparently, and collaboratively. Now, operationally, volunteers can't just be dropped into a system. They must receive task specific training, safety orientation, and appropriate supervision by city staff. Volunteers would never operate heavy equipment unless explicitly authorized and certified. and all activities must align with the safety provisions already outlined in the CBA. Documentation, hours, training, and incident reports is essential for accountability and transparency. Okay, and so now measurement is what makes the program defensible and sustainable. Annual reporting should track volunteer hours, types of tasks completed, and how those efforts contribute to reducing deferred maintenance. Just as importantly, reports should examine geographic equity, ensuring volunteer efforts are distributed fairly across neighborhoods. Now, this data helps justify resources, demonstrate public value, and maintain trust with both labor and the community. Now, this slide summarizes the core contractual recommendations. First, adding a new article to formally establish the volunteer program. Second, strengthening non-displacement protections. Third, attaching a task list exhibit that clearly distinguishes permitted, prohibited, and exclusive work. Fourth, formalizing the oversight committee and volunteer management role. And finally, creating an expedited dispute resolution process specifically for volunteer overlap concerns. Okay, now in my conclusion and next steps. In conclusion, integrating volunteers into a unionized parks department is feasible, but only when governance, training, and contractual safeguards are explicit. The recommended next steps are practical and incremental. First, draft proposed contract language, secure legal review, convene the union management committee, and pilot the volunteer manager role. An immediate action would be circulating the proposed language as a side letter or a letter of understanding, allowing both parties to test mutual acceptance before formal amendment. Now, this approach protects labor, strengthens public services, and builds long-term community stewardship. Thank you so much for allowing me an opportunity to do research and propose um, maybe some suggestions that could aid Terre Haute as you continue on with Parks and Recreations in this fiscal year and specifically in this arrangement you have with the union. Thank you again.